Most people talk about success as if it is a straight road. Work hard, stay focused, and one day you will win. But the life of Nelson Mandela destroys that simple idea. His journey was not a straight road. It was a path filled with injustice, prison bars, silence, and years that seemed wasted. Yet those years were not wasted. They were shaping a man who would later shape a nation. Nelson Mandela was born in 1918 in a small village in South Africa. He did not grow up with wealth or power. He grew up under a system that divided people by the color of their skin. This system, known as apartheid, was not just unfair. It was designed to break dignity. Black South Africans were denied basic rights. They could not vote freely, live where they wished, or move without restrictions. Opportunity was controlled. Freedom was limited. As a young man, Mandela could have chosen a quiet life. He was educated, intelligent, and capable of building a successful career as a lawyer. In fact, he did become a lawyer and helped many who could not defend themselves. But he saw something deeper. He saw that individual success meant little if millions around him were suffering. This is where his real story begins. Not with power, but with a decision that he joined the African National Congress, a political organization fighting against apartheid. At first, the resistance was peaceful. Protests, speeches, petitions. They believed change could come through dialogue. But the government responded with violence. Peaceful demonstrators were attacked. Voices were silenced. Hope seemed fragile. Here lies the first major contrast in Mandela's life. He believed in justice, yet he was labeled a criminal. He demanded equality, yet he was treated as a threat. As oppression intensified, Mandela and others concluded that peaceful protest alone was not enough. He helped organize acts of sabotage against government structures, carefully planned to avoid harming civilians. Even so, the state reacted harshly. In 1962, Mandela was arrested. After a long trial, he was sentenced to life in prison. Imagine hearing that sentence. Life. Not 5 years. Not 10. Life. For many, that would have been the end of the story. A forgotten activist locked away on Robben Island. A symbol of failure. But prison did not end his mission. It transformed it. Robben Island was cold, isolated, and unforgiving. Prisoners performed hard labor. They broke stones under the sun. They were given little food and minimal contact with the outside world. Letters were rare and heavily censored. Mandela spent 27 years in prison. 27 years while the world outside kept moving. Think about that contrast. While other leaders built careers, he sat in a cell. While others raised families freely, he watched his children grow up from a distance. Time, the most valuable resource, was taken from him. Yet he refused to let prison take his purpose. Instead of allowing bitterness to consume him, Mandela studied. He read books. He learned the language of his oppressors. He reflected deeply on leadership and power. Many expected him to emerge angry and vengeful. Instead, prison refined his thinking. It strengthened his discipline. It expanded his vision. This is what makes his story powerful. Never giving up does not always mean loud resistance. Sometimes it means silent endurance. It means protecting your inner strength when everything external is controlled. Over the years, international pressure on South Africa increased. The world began to recognize the injustice of apartheid. Protests spread globally. Governments imposed sanctions. Inside the country, unrest continued. The system that once seemed permanent began to crack. In 1990, after 27 years behind bars, Nelson Mandela walked free. That moment could have been fueled by revenge. He had every reason to be angry. Decades stolen. Family moments missed. Freedom denied. Yet when he spoke, his message was not about punishment. It was about reconciliation. He understood something crucial: if South Africa replaced one form of hatred with another, the cycle would never end. Here comes another powerful contrast. A man treated without mercy chose mercy. A leader denied justice chose justice for all. Mandela entered negotiations with the same government that had imprisoned him. These discussions were tense and complex. Violence still threatened the nation. Many doubted peaceful transition was possible. But Mandela insisted on dialogue. He believed that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election where citizens of all races could vote. Millions stood in long lines, waiting for hours, some with tears in their eyes. Nelson Mandela was elected president. From prisoner to president. From a small cell to the highest office in the land. It sounds almost unreal. Yet the real victory was not the title. It was the message. As president, Mandela focused on unity. He worked to build trust between divided communities. He supported national reconciliation efforts. He encouraged forgiveness, not because the past did not matter, but because the future mattered more. His leadership showed that strength is not always loud. It is not always aggressive. Sometimes strength is restraint. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is the decision to keep moving forward when progress feels invisible. The phrase, "never give up," is often repeated casually. But in Mandela's life, it meant something profound. It meant continuing the fight for dignity when the world calls you dangerous. It meant holding on to hope during decades of isolation. It meant believing that justice could win, even when injustice seemed permanent. Mandela retired after one term as president, choosing not to cling to power. That decision alone revealed his character. He was never driven by position. He was driven by principle. His story teaches that setbacks do not define the end. Prison did not define him. Oppression did not define him. What defined him was his response. Each obstacle became preparation. Each hardship became training. Never giving up does not guarantee immediate victory. Sometimes it demands years of unseen struggle. But Mandela's life proves that resilience can reshape history. One person, refusing to surrender his belief in equality, changed the direction of a nation. And perhaps that is the most important lesson. Circumstances may limit your freedom, delay your dreams, or test your patience. But they cannot control your commitment unless you allow them to. Nelson Mandela never allowed them to.